Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day today to listen to the podcast wherever you may be. We have a lot to break down for you this week. Obviously, the Cavs season is coming to its end, but the NBA playoff and play-in tournament are just around the corner. Logan Purcell will be joining me in a few minutes to break all of that down for you. We will also talk about the Wnba as the regular season for that league has started this week as well. We'll also get you caught up with what's going on with the Indians' scores, upcoming schedules, standings, what you need to be concerned with Cleveland baseball. And then last but certainly not least, the Cleveland Browns official schedule has been released. It was released this Wednesday, so we will keep you up. Logan and I will talk about the big matchups the Browns will have this season and what we can expect for our Browns heading into this upcoming season. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. You're listening to it right here on ArdoniaHills.news, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of ArdoniaHills.news, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. As I mentioned, I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for joining me this week as we take you through another edition of the podcast. You know what time it is, fans. It's time for your sports fact of the day. Now, today is May 15th, 2021, and on this day, 13 years ago, we're going to give you a sports fact of the day with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, this day, May 15th, 2008, Game 6 of an Eastern Conference semifinal matchup between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics, the Cavs, LeBron James and company, facing elimination on their home court. However, with a Herculean, and I mean Herculean performance from Cleveland's LeBron James, 32 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists in 47 minutes, the most minutes any Cavalier would play that night, got Cleveland the win against the Boston Celtics, who were a loaded team back in 2008 with Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Kendrick Perkins, Rondo, Posey, P.J. Brown, Glenn Davis, Eddie House. That was a magnificent roster the Celtics had, and basically LeBron kept the Cavs alive. They avoided elimination in Game 6, tying the series at 3-3 at Quicken Loans Arena on their home court with a 5-point win, 74-69 over Boston. As I mentioned, LeBron with 32 of Cleveland's 74 points. The only other Cavs player to score in double digits in Game 6 was Delonte West. He had 10 points and 3 rebounds, all in 45 minutes. LeBron and Delonte West played the most minutes out of any of the Cavaliers. LeBron, as I mentioned, played 47. Delonte West playing a couple of seconds over 45 minutes. So that is your sports fact of the day. Unfortunately, the Cavs would go on to lose that series against Boston in 7 games. They would lose 97-92 2 days later. The Celtics would then go on to win the NBA championship in 6 games in 2008 against Kobe Bryant and the Los Angeles Lakers. Basketball fans, don't worry, because Logan Purcell and I are going to come right back to basketball because we have a lot of news to talk about there. First and foremost, I want to get you updated with the Premier League. As of right now, standings, Manchester City still with a comfortable margin in between them and Manchester United. 83 points thus far on the season for Manchester City. They have 26 wins, 5 draws, 5 losses. Manchester United comes in at second place with 70 points with 20 wins, 10 draws, 6 losses. Leicester City has a total of 20 wins, 6 ties, 10 losses on the season for 66 total points, and only 2 points behind them with 64 points are Chelsea. 18 wins for Chelsea, 10 draws, 8 losses. And in 5th place, we have Liverpool with 60 points. Liverpool with 17 wins, 9 ties, and 9 losses on the season thus far. That rounds out your top 5 this week for the Premier League. Now, the top 4 seeds, as I mentioned, Manchester City, Manchester United, Leicester City, and Chelsea, they have all clinched UEFA Champions League group stage qualifications, and they have been playing, all these 4 teams have been playing very well, all of them above 60 points. Now, Liverpool, with their 5th place, they have qualified for the Europa League group stage. Now, those are your standings this week for the Premier League. Let's get you caught up with the overall stats. Harry Kane and Mohamed Salah are now tied for most goals. Each player with 21 goals on the season thus far. We'll see who takes the Golden Boot home this year for the Premier League in these next few weeks. Bruno Fernandes comes in at 2nd place, the Manchester United player with 18 goals on the season thus far. And then Son Heung-min comes in at 3rd place with a total of 17 goals on the season. Now, in assists, Harry Kane still leads the league in assists. 13 assists for Kane. Bruno Fernandes and Kevin De Bruyne have tied for 2nd, with each of those 2 players with 11 assists on the season. And then Jack Grealish and Son Heung-min have tied for 3rd place, each of them with 10 assists on the season. Upcoming matches in the Premier League. We already had a few matches that have taken place today. Yesterday, Manchester City took on Newcastle in a wild matchup. Manchester City getting the better of Newcastle 4-3. And earlier this morning, Leeds United defeated Burnley by a final score of 4-0. Southampton also defeated Fulham today by a final score of 3-1. More matches for you this week in the Premier League. We have Brighton going up against West Ham, Crystal Palace taking on Aston Villa tomorrow at 7 a.m. to kick off your Sunday morning. Tottenham Hotspur will be going up against the Wolves tomorrow as well at 9:05. West Brom taking on Liverpool at 11:30 a.m. And then Everton will be going up against Sheffield United tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock p.m. Now, fans, let's get you caught up with the MLS. Now, Columbus Crew, in their latest updates, we'll get you caught up with what's going on with them. Now, the Crew have only had 1 game since the last time I spoke to you in a podcast. They faced off against Toronto FC and lost by a final score of 2-0. Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore, an early goal in the 13th minute by Bradley, and Josie Altidore in the 87th minute gave Toronto a 2-0 win over the Columbus Crew. The Crew also had a game the day of our previous podcast against DC United. They won that game before their loss in Toronto, thanks to goals from Lucas Zelarayan and 2 own goals from DC United. I guess DC United forgot which goal they were supposed to score in. 2 own goals by DC United, Frederick Bryant in the 63rd minute, and then Jose Antonio Alfaro Vasquez in the 83rd minute with another own goal to help Columbus secure a 3-1 win over DC United. The upcoming schedule for the Crew: tomorrow, 6 p.m., they will be in New England for a matchup with the Revolution. Now, New England lost to the Columbus Crew in the Eastern Conference Finals of the MLS playoffs last year to help them secure a spot in the MLS Cup final. And this now upcoming schedule for the Crew, they are currently on a 3-game road trip. Their loss in Toronto was Game 1. Game 2 will be in New England against the Revolution, and then their 3rd game of the road trip will be in New York City, as they'll be going up against New York City FC before returning to Columbus for 2 home games against Toronto and Chicago. Overall standings in the Premier League for the Columbus Crew: they currently 4 matches played thus far, 1 win, 2 draws, and 1 loss for the Crew. They have 5 points on the season thus far. FC Cincinnati, sadly, are at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings right now. To be more specific for FC Cincinnati, they have not played since May 1st, where they lost to Orlando City by a final score of 3-0. However, Miami will resume their schedule tomorrow at 4 p.m. They'll be hosting Inter Miami. The next game for FC Cincinnati won't be until Saturday, May 22nd, where they will take on the Montreal Impact, and then they'll take on New England at the end of the month. As I mentioned, FC Cincinnati at the bottom of the Eastern Conference standings right now. No wins, 1 tie, 2 losses for FC Cincinnati thus far. That 1 tie allowed FC Cincinnati to gain only 1 point. And as I mentioned, a 1 win, and this includes the Premier League as well, fans. A win gets you 3 points, a tie gets each team 1 point, and then a loss, that losing team will not receive any points. And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back into basketball. Cavs fans, I was mentioning that a little bit earlier. Logan Purcell is on the phone with me. Logan, thank you so much for joining me this week. Really appreciate having you on. How have you been doing this past week?
I've been doing all right. It's been a good week, but I'm excited for today.
Yeah, I've been very excited for today as well, because there is so much to break down with the NBA as the play-in tournament is right around the corner, starts next week. But first, let's talk about the Cavs, who sadly have been eliminated from any kind of play-in or playoff competition. Their most recent game, Logan, yesterday in the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., against Russell Westbrook and the Washington Wizards. Now, Russell Westbrook did pass Oscar Robertson for most triple-doubles of all time, and what a phenomenal accomplishment. And Russell Westbrook got another triple-double last night with his 183rd career triple-double. Just an amazing stat line. But in terms of the game itself, Cavs outside of Colin Sexton were kind of struggling to find some quality scoring. Isaac Okoro had a strong game, however, 17 points for him. Jared Allen looked like he got out of his groove with 18 points. Chetty Osman and Dean Wade combined for 28 points, but Darius Garland did return, only had 3 points in 12 minutes, and it was really just, to me, I thought a quality effort from the Cavs, but that third quarter, once again, Logan, was really what doomed them. They were outscored 33-20 by Washington in that third quarter, and this was a Washington team who, going into last night's game, had a record of 1-10 without their best player, Bradley Beal, and they just got a second win without Beal in the lineup last night for the Wizards. How do you analyze this game, Logan? Because this wasn't a game where the Cavs got blown out and embarrassed, but this was also a game where I felt like they were right there, and they really just took their foot off the gas pedal in that third quarter and let Washington take over. So what were your thoughts on that game last night?
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely think that there was more that the Cavs could have done, especially in that third quarter, like you mentioned. But, to a degree, then this might be the only time you're ever going to hear me say this, make an excuse for the Cavs, but this guy, Russell Westbrook's on a tear.
Yeah.
He is a monster. 21 points, 12 rebounds, 17 assists. He just makes everybody around him so much better.
Right.
If you were going to do that against one specific player, this would be the dude to do it against. Because this guy is just he doesn't let you make mistakes. Yeah, 110%
effort.
From that standpoint, I don't think that, there was much that they could have done once Russell Westbrook began to do Russell Westbrook thing. But I definitely think that they should have performed better, and they should have gotten more shots up. They didn't shoot a whole lot. Isaac Okoro, you mentioned he had a good game, but he also shot 2 of 10 from 3. He's not a shooter.
Right.
And for him to be taking 10 threes a game is kind of absurd.
Yeah, and to me, and also, Logan, you were mentioning field goal percentage. Cavs were right there. They shot 46% from 3. They made more 3-pointers, actually, than the Wizards. 10 3-pointers for the Cavs, only 7 for the Wizards. The Cavs also were converted at the free throw line for the most part, 17 of 21. But they did have 17 turnovers as well, Logan. How disappointed have you been with the turnover game? Because I really feel like this is something the Cavaliers have really struggled with, not only just this season, but these last few seasons. They've never really been able to clean that up. So who do you blame the most for the Cavs continuing this turnover battle that they've been having to deal with?
Well, I blame two people for this particular problem that, I've talked about and you've talked about multiple times throughout the course of this season as one of the biggest problems with this team. But to me, the blame goes on a couple of people, and one of them is JB Bickerstaff, and not enforcing, clean basketball.
Yeah.
And the person, believe it or not just Darius Garland. I actually don't blame Darius Garland as much for it, but Colin Sexton.
Yeah.
I understand that he's not on a team full of superstars, but good Lord, you could not be more bold on it. Mm-hmm. He had 6 turnovers. That is unbelievable. That is a lot of turnovers for a guy that's supposed to be the best player on this team.
Would you?
To me, you can't put up numbers like 26 points and 4 assists and then have 6 turnovers on top of it.
Would you rather? I was going to ask you this, Logan, real quick, because you were mentioning Darius Garland. Would you rather have Darius Garland run point guard on a more consistent basis, if that's the case?
Yeah, I do think that Darius Garland is a much better on-ball guard than Colin Sexton, and I think Colin Sexton is a much better off guard than he is on ball, because if you also think about it from a matchup standpoint, Colin Sexton is, in my eyes, a much more elite defender than a lot of people give him credit for.
Right.
But I think that he should be on the best matchup defensively. From an offensive standpoint, he should be guarding the best player on every team, unless he's 7 foot.
Yeah.
Unless it's Kevin Durant or LeBron. But when it comes to a guard standpoint, he should be guarding the best player, but that does not mean he has to take up the ball.
Right.
So, to me, I think that he's a much better off guard, and I would much prefer Darius Garland take up the ball.
Yeah, maybe, it would make sense if JB Bickerstaff could make that adjustment heading into next season. But right now, Logan, let's focus on the end of this season. And the Cavs this week had one big win. They had an 11-game losing streak at one point, and that ended against Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics. The Cavs that night were terrific. Kevin Love with his best game of the season, 30 points in 34 minutes to also go along with 14 rebounds. Isaac Okoro, 15 points, so he's been scoring the ball a lot more, Logan. 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists. Colin Sexton, 28 points, 8 assists, and 2 rebounds as well. Logan, I was very pleased with this effort from the Cavs, but, at the same time, I'm a little concerned about the Celtics because, now the Celtics will not have Jaylen Brown for the rest of the season with a torn ligament in his wrist, so that's going to be a huge deficit the Boston Celtics are going to have to overcome, and we're not even in the play-in tournament yet. So, Logan, this Cavs win this past Wednesday, was this more about the Cavs winning or the Celtics losing?
I think you could go either way with it. For this particular instance, I'm going to go with the Celtics losing. My reasoning for that, if you think about it, at the end of the day, the Cavs are not a team that is going to make any noise. They can't. Literally, statistically, they can't make any noise at this point.
Yeah.
The Celtics, however, from a player-by-player standpoint, look like on paper, one of the better teams in the NBA, minus the record, minus the stats. You look at this team, compare them to any of the other teams in the East, and they can give them a run for their money. Until you lose Jaylen Brown. I think that, you talk about how big it was. I would go to the point of saying it's the most monumental loss of any team this season.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Because, the Nets, you want to talk about them losing James Harden, or even if they were to lose Kyrie or something like that, they've got 2 other better than superstar players on that team.
Yeah, exactly.
The Celtics, it's JT and it's JB. It's those 2 guys.
Mm-hmm.
Kemba can put a little bit in here and there, but Kemba's inconsistent. Marcus Smart's a very great defender, but he's not there offensively. Evan Fournier, I love the addition. He's been firing on all cylinders recently.
Yeah, he's been playing very well.
That kind of guy.
Yeah.
This team needed that guy. And at this point, I'm at the point of my Celtic opinion. This team might get out of the first round. And it hurts for me to say that, but they might get out of the first round.
Do you think?
I don't see them getting shipped in the play-in.
Really?
But I don't know if they make it out of the first round in the East.
I mean, because, I'm thinking about that play-in, and the Celtics have secured that play-in spot against, it looks like they're going to be playing Charlotte. And, I mean, I'm concerned. I mean, if you're a Celtics fan, without Jaylen Brown, this Hornets team, is no joke. You got Rozier, you got Bridges, Devontae Graham, P.J. Washington. You've got some big guys. And then you have Gordon Hayward. We'll see. I don't think he'll be able to play, but as I mentioned, Terry Rozier has been phenomenal. LaMelo Ball's back, so I mean, if you're a Celtics fan, I would be concerned about this play-in matchup with the Celtics. Would you be concerned, Logan, with the Celtics going up against the Hornets in that play-in round?
I mean, to a degree, yeah, but as a lot of history has shown, come playoff time, it's not just about skill. Experience does make a huge difference. You talk about the very impressive athleticism and the ability to run for the Charlotte Hornets team, but I also see a lot of youth. Miles Bridges, LaMelo Ball, all those guys are young. I believe they're all under 23, all their top guys.
But Terry Rozier has experience, though. I mean, if you look at it from an experience factor, I wanted to point this out to you, Logan. Terry Rozier and Gordon Hayward have experience, I would think. So, I mean, they have some veteran... And, Bismack Biyombo has been to the conference finals, too. So, I mean, they've got some veteran guys.
Yeah, and that's totally fair reasoning. But at the same time, I mean, guys like Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, they've been... I mean, don't get me wrong, Terry Rozier was a big piece back in 2018, when the Celtics got all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Right.
When Kyrie and Hayward went down, but I wouldn't say that Terry Rozier has ever been a crucial part of a playoff run team. I mean, you think back to that 2018 series, Jason Tatum was dropping buckets as a rookie.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he averaged something like 24 a game in that series against LeBron. And
right.
He was just getting buckets. And that's what Tatum does. Everybody knows that now. So, to me, does it concern me? Am I biting my nails a little bit watching that play-in? A little. But I'm not too scared. Because even assuming the Celtics were to go and, lose to the Hornets, they're going to go play either Washington, which I don't think anybody's looking at Washington like anything.
Yeah, I'm not. No.
A play-in team.
Yeah.
And then there's Indiana, who, I mean, I'm sorry, they're ridiculous. I don't even know what they're doing. Karis LeVert and Sabonis have been very good. But, I mean, compared to last year, I think Sabonis has been a little bit subpar. Especially as a team, they've been subpar, so they don't scare me. I'm a little bit concerned about Charlotte, but I'm not too worried. I think the Celtics are going to be playoffs.
I certainly expect the Wizards, because that right now, that 9-10 in the seed in the East are the Pacers and the Wizards respectively. I don't see the Wizards having problems against the Pacers, so Celtics, if they lose, would have to play either the Pacers or the Wizards, most likely, in my opinion, the Wizards, to secure that 8th spot. Now, if Charlotte beats Boston, they will automatically get the 7th seed, and then Boston would have to play either Indiana or Washington. So, Logan, let's talk about the remainder of the Cavs schedule, which is only one game. Getting back to the Cavs here. So tomorrow, the Cavs will be in Brooklyn, New York, to take on, at Barclays Center, to take on the Nets. This will be the third and final matchup between the Cavs and the Nets. And surprisingly, the Cavs have won both of the previous two matches against Brooklyn. Both of those games were in Cleveland. So Sexton had a career night, 41 points, if I'm not mistaken, against the Nets back in January. So, but now Brooklyn will have all their 3 stars are coming back now. Looks like they're going to get ready for this playoff push. So, Logan, your prediction for tomorrow, and also a kind of a wrap-up, an analysis on the season for the Cavs as well. So let's talk about the game at first. I'm expecting Brooklyn to handle their business tomorrow, but what do you want to see from the Cavs, specifically against this 3-headed monster in the Brooklyn Nets tomorrow night?
Well, I mean, there's not a whole lot you can really expect. I mean, you already mentioned it, 3 all-stars. This team is absolutely loaded, and I refuse to eat my own words when I said that I don't think that I wasn't sure if the Nets was going to work with all 3 of those guys so ball dominant. I'm not eating them yet. This team hasn't done anything in the playoffs yet.
Yeah.
I need to see something happen, and then talk to me come NBA Finals time. But I mean, from the Cavs, I'd like to see Colin Sexton for one last time just hold down the turnovers a little bit.
Yeah.
I just need to see it one time, just so he can prove that he can do it. If he can do that for me, I'll be okay. But I mean, this team, you want to talk about it as a total on the season,
right.
29th in scoring. Boy, I hope they get some scores in the drafts, because this is going to be a long season next year if they don't get anything. I mean, they are at the bottom of everything offensively.
How would you rate the Cavs, some of the top Cavs players this season? Who do you think stood out to you the most? Was there a player who kind of came out of the shadows and, gave you some confidence that they can have a strong career going forward? Was there a player that you were very disappointed with this season? So what are your thoughts on that, Logan? Like, maybe most impressive player that you weren't expecting to play well, and then which player were you most disappointed with this year?
Well, honestly, personally, my most impressive player, or my most improved, I guess I should say, I mean, they weren't necessarily impressive, but improved, was Darius Garland.
Really?
You look at a lot of guys, a guy like Dean Wade had a really solid year as well.
Yeah.
But he was just a bit too inconsistent for me. I think Darius Garland was a bit more consistent when it came to the numbers aspect. But, I mean, you talk about his rookie year. It was a solid year, 12.3 points per game on 40% from the field, 35 from 3, and about 4 assists. Now he's up around 18 points a game, 45, 39, and 6. I just think that those are the kind of numbers that we need from the starting guard on this team. And that's just another reason why I think that he needs to be the number one guy taking the ball up the whole game.
Right.
So I think that from a most improved standpoint, it's got to be him. The only reason I don't mention Colin Sexton is his efficiency.
And we've known
really
this, too.
Improved.
And we know what he can do, too, so.
Exactly. I mean, last year he averaged just over 20 points a game. He averaged about 25 this year. So, I mean, 5 points a game is 5 points a game, but his efficiency numbers weren't all that different. Still averaged 47% from the field, and his assists didn't grow a whole lot either. Actually, his turnovers improved or got worse.
Right.
So, that's the only reason I don't mention Colin Sexton. And then Jared Allen, I don't really know if you can talk about him since he wasn't here all year. But Darius Garland's got to be my pick for most improved, most impressive player this year for the Cavs.
And finally, Logan, this final topic about the Cavs. Do you think that Jared Allen will stay with the Cavs this offseason? What do you think would be the best option for him? Should he look for another team to join? Should he stay with the Cavs? What are your thoughts on the whole Jared Allen situation?
Well, he's got to look at it from two ways. I mean, number one, if you're looking to compete and just win rings, you're not doing it in Cleveland. So obviously, you gotta move. You gotta look somewhere where you will win championships. But if he's just personally right now looking to improve as a man and as a player, Cleveland, I don't see any other team that is much better to improve at Cleveland, because they don't have. I mean, Sexton's okay, but they don't have a locked-in number one scorer every single game. So, and they clearly don't have a consistent big man. So I don't see why Jared Allen would go anywhere else if he's solely looking to improve.
Yeah, and I would also think the Cavs would probably offer him one of the teams that would offer him the most money heading into this offseason. But we'll see what happens. We'll definitely know what happens tomorrow at 7 p.m. Cavs will be in Brooklyn taking on the Nets for their final game of the season. In terms of standings, Logan and I have talked about this already. Cavs, 13th place out of 15 in the Eastern Conference. They're only 1-9 in their last 10 games. 22-49 is their record. Looking to get their 23rd win tomorrow against Brooklyn. But as I mentioned, that three-headed monster out there at Barclays Center definitely will be a challenge for the Cavs tomorrow night. Now, Logan, let's talk about overall NBA standings here real quick before we move on. Right now, Sixers in the first seed, Nets at the second seed, Bucks are at the third seed. Atlanta's been playing very well. They're the fourth. Looks like they're going to secure that fourth seed. However, Miami is only a half game behind them, so still kind of unsure of what's going to happen there. Knicks have the 6th seed right now, so they have secured a playoff position. They secured it this week. We already talked about the play-in teams: Boston, Charlotte, Indiana, and Washington. Now, in the Western Conference, Logan, it's a toss-up between Phoenix and Utah right now. As of right now, the Utah Jazz have that first seed in the Western Conference with 51 wins, 20 losses. Phoenix right there with a record of 49-21. Third and fourth place, respectively, it's Denver and the LA Clippers. I've been very impressed with Denver and how they've been playing with Jamal Murray hurt, Logan. And fifth place, we have the Mavericks. They're 42-29. The Portland Trailblazers are in 6th place. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games, have been playing some great basketball. 41-30. Lakers in that 7th spot, Logan. So, right now, that 7th spot has not been determined in the Western Conference, but we do know that Golden State, Memphis, and San Antonio have clinched a play-in position. So in the West, we're waiting for who's going to be that 7th seed to join those 3 teams in the play-in tournament. Well, let me ask you this, Logan. If the Lakers meet the Golden State Warriors in a play-in tournament, I'll ask you this. Are you biting your nails as well? Because we were talking about if the Celtics meet the Hornets. Are you biting the nails if the Lakers meet the Warriors? Because Steph is arguably playing the best basketball we've ever seen him play, and the Lakers' health is questionable. So what are your thoughts if it comes to fruition, a Lakers-Warriors play-in game?
Well, personally, I don't know if I'm biting my nails, but I can tell you this much. I know LeBron James and Anthony Davis are biting their nails. If they got to go in to Chase Center and go play Steph Curry right now with the level of basketball that he's playing. But, I'm not too worried about this team because similarly to the Celtics, we're talking about one of the best teams in the NBA regardless of how you look at it.
Right.
You can look at how they played this year. We're talking about Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I talked about how my concern with the Lakers would be Anthony Davis, right? Let's not get this mixed up. The dude dropped like 42 and 12 a couple nights ago.
Yeah.
So I just want to put that out there and be like, Anthony Davis is back, and he said it himself. LeBron is kind of irritating me a little bit, though, with the whole I won't come back thing. We're going to go back-to-back. See, now LeBron's running his mouth. He's a man on a mission. So, I think a lot of other teams in the West should be scared of LeBron James. But, I think it's going to be very interesting between these two teams, but I'm not too worried about it. I don't think LeBron James and Anthony Davis should be too worried about it. But if they cannot take out Steph Curry, and in this rare scenario, or common, I guess you could say, and Curry drops 60 and beats 15, then there's going to be a lot of pressure riding on Anthony Davis and LeBron James.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about another Western Conference team as well, Logan. The Denver Nuggets. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games without Jamal Murray. Do you think that how Denver's been playing since Murray went down, it's solidifying Jokic's claim to be a league MVP?
You can look at it like maybe he is the MVP. Honestly, because Jokic has had a fabulous 7-footer that can snipe from anywhere. He has an unbelievable fadeaway, similar to what you could say looks like Dirk.
Yeah.
He's efficient. He's shooting over 50% from the field, 11 rebounds a game, nearly 9 assists. He's got a steal and a half and a block.
Right.
And without his superstar point guard next to him and Jamal Murray, you could make the argument that he could be. But the only thing that kind of hinders his argument is this dude, Michael Porter Jr., has had a fabulous step up.
Yes.
Since, the loss of Jamal Murray. Aside from, last night's tough game, he had 9 points against Detroit. But, you talk about the game against Charlotte, Brooklyn, Utah, 30, 28, 31. This guy has been putting up numbers.
Yeah.
So the only thing that hinders it, believe it or not, is the positivity of his teammate. But Nikola Jokic, for me, is probably the MVP right now in the NBA.
And, it certainly has made the case of why he should be league MVP. A center doing the things he can do with the ball, especially in terms of passing, is just absolutely phenomenal. Logan, let's talk about maybe what the Nets will face in the playoffs. They're either, you were talking about this too. Milwaukee, they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. Sixers 8-2 in their last 10 games. You've got the size and tenacity of the Knicks. Miami's been playing very well. They're 8-2 in their last 10 games. They beat down the Celtics twice this past week. So are you concerned with the Nets in terms of what they have to go up against? And, a lot of these big dogs of the Eastern Conference are ending the season on very high notes. And the Nets have kind of been mediocre these last couple of weeks. They have won their last 3, but, there was a time they were on the verge of losing 5 in a row. So are you nervous about, the competition the Nets are going to have to face? That competition's kind of ramping up now. Are you concerned about what the Nets are going to face in the playoffs?
I'm not too concerned, no, because just like, a lot of times, like you mentioned, playoff competition ramps up the difficulty. But at the same time, the level of play from superstars amps up come playoff time. I mean, we've seen all 3 of these guys, all 3 of them, Durant, Harden, and Kyrie, all play on another level in the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, we saw Harden with Chris Paul nearly take out Kevin Durant and the Golden State Warriors. Nearly.
Yeah.
7 games.
Yeah.
Unbelievable elite level of play in the playoffs. We've seen Kyrie. All Cleveland fans remember the shot.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yep.
Remember that.
Right.
And as much as it sucks, everybody remembers how cold-hearted Kevin Durant was in the NBA Finals 2018 when they took out the Cavs in 4.
Yeah.
So, all 3 of these guys have the ability to step up come playoff time. And I'm not too concerned because the Eastern Conference, at least I think 6 and on, is pretty subpar. So I'm not too worried for the Nets. I think this team will play to the level that they should and to the level that we know they will.
And I'm going to be very excited to see how KD, Harden, and Kyrie fit together, with Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni on that sideline coaching. We'll see how the others of the Brooklyn Nets get involved as well. It's definitely going to be an awesome playoffs this year. And the play-in tournament will begin May 18th through the 21st. The NBA playoffs will officially begin on May 22nd. So Logan and I will have a lot to break down after the play-in tournament and as we get into the playoffs as well. So I am very excited for that as well. Now, Logan, last NBA topic here. We have the 2021 NBA Hall of Fame induction ceremony is tonight. And we have some amazing players who will be inducted into the Hall of Fame, including Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, Kobe Bryant, the late, great Kobe Bryant, who will be introduced by Michael Jordan. So that's very fitting to me. Kobe Bryant basically spent his career trying to be Michael Jordan, emulating Michael Jordan the best he could. When we think of Be Like Mike, I think the person closest to ever get there was Kobe Bryant himself. Such an amazing, lavished career. And then you also have guys, Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan, also NBA champions, who definitely deserve a spot in the Hall of Fame. Also, Rudy Tomjanovich, who was the coach of Hakeem Olajuwon, in Houston in those back-to-back years they won the NBA Finals, will also be inducted into the Hall of Fame today as well. So, Logan, I just want to get your thoughts on this real quick. Is there a certain moment that you remember any of these 3 players, Kobe, Tim Duncan, and Garnett, that really stuck out to you? I know when you were probably very young when these guys were playing, but was there something that any of these guys from any of these guys' career that you remember specifically?
I mean, yeah, everybody remembers the oops to Shaq in the NBA Finals when Kobe was, at probably maybe his elite prime level. I mean, just an absolutely amazing player. All of these guys were. I mean, I remember everybody, and well, not everybody, but definitely me, considering Tim Duncan as the greatest power forward to ever live.
Yeah.
Kevin Garnett was maybe the greatest trash talker in NBA history.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think he deserves a whole award of his own. Kobe Bryant, elite on every aspect of basketball. I mean, everybody makes fun of him because he couldn't pass or didn't pass. but it doesn't matter because this guy didn't have to. All he did was shoot over people and knock it down, even when it didn't look like he could. So, I mean, I don't even see anybody who doesn't deserve to be there. I think all three of those guys are absolutely elite and are very deserving of being NBA Hall of Famers.
Yeah, and absolutely hit it right on the money, Logan. And it's awesome that Kobe Bryant's award will be presented by Michael Jordan. Two probably of the greatest basketball players ever to live. In my opinion, two of the best 5 NBA players ever. So, I mean, if you think of it that way, just the impact that they've had on sports in general has just been amazing. Last basketball topic here to discuss, Logan. WNBA began yesterday. We had our first stint of regular season games. And the New York Liberty defeated the Indiana Fever in the final seconds. Sun defeat the Dream by 11, 78-67. The Mercury defeat the Minnesota Lynx 77-75, and then the Wings handled their business against the Sparks 94-71. So Dallas, with a great start to their season, obviously they had a very successful WNBA draft, excuse me. And today we have 2 additional matches. The Sky will be taking on the Washington Mystics, and the Aces will be going up against the Seattle Storm. Logan, I want to ask you this question about the WNBA. What are your thoughts on the Seattle Storm possibly repeating as champions? You have some great players on the squad who clearly have a great deal of experience. And so, what are your thoughts on the Storm repeating as champions?
I think there's a really good chance of it happening. I mean, they handled their business last season in dealing with the championship and getting it done, but this team is loaded with veterans, people who have been there and people who have done it. Sue Bird, Brianna Stewart, both of them.
Yeah.
The 2 key factors in this team, but both of them have performed when it matters. And I think that both of them still have a chance, even though Sue Bird is going into her, I believe, the 20th year of her career. Absolutely elite. When you think of WNBA, you think of Sue Bird. So I think that this team's chances of repeating are just as high as winning it last year.
What are your thoughts on Candace Parker and the Chicago Sky? Because Candace Parker, to me, is clearly a franchise player. And, the Sky, they've got some great talent on that team. So what are your thoughts on what the Chicago Sky can do in the playoffs?
I think that this team has a lot of veterans, as you mentioned, but it's a little bit younger than this Seattle Storm team. So it kind of concerns me to think about the fact that this team will ultimately have to run into that the Storm team. So it does worry me a little bit. But as you mentioned, Candace Parker is one of the best players in the WNBA and has been for some time now. She's a superstar talent, and this team's got a lot of people that can score the basketball and will score the basketball. So it's a very good team, and I'm really excited to see what happens this season with them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be a great season for the WNBA. Their 25th anniversary season, so that is definitely something to look forward to. As I mentioned, today we have 2 awesome matchups for you. The Chicago Sky, who we just finished talking about, will be in D.C. taking on the Mystics, and then the Las Vegas Aces will be in Seattle going up against the Storm. Tomorrow we have the New York Liberty taking on the Indiana Fever, and then the Phoenix Mercury going up against the Connecticut Sun tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. So, Logan, that concludes all of our basketball news for this week. Let's move on to MLB, some baseball here, and talk about our Cleveland Indians, who have been playing very well, to be quite honest with you, these last few games. Their most recent loss was yesterday in Seattle against the Mariners. That was Game 2 of the series between Cleveland and Seattle. The first game, Indians defeated the Mariners. Final score of that game, 4-2. And the Indians, after the third inning, were up 4-0 and looked dominant. Seattle scored 2 runs in the 8th inning but it was too little too late, and the Indians got their 21st win of the season this past Thursday against Seattle. The Indians also defeated the Cubs in back-to-back games this past Tuesday by a final score of 3-2, and then this past Wednesday by a final score of 2-1. So, Logan, how do you feel about the Indians? Because this is their first loss in about a week. Their last loss was Friday, May 7th, against the Cincinnati Reds, where they lost 3-0. So how do you feel, even though the Indians lost last night to Seattle 7-3, how do you feel about the Indians so far?
Well, they've done really well this past week. I mean, 4 in a row, as you mentioned, they beat Cincinnati in a really good performance, and then a lot of really close ones. But winning the close battles is just as impressive as winning big ones, because it shows that you can win it in crunch time. So I've been very impressed this past week with the Indians, and that 4-game winning streak that they went on was exactly what this team needed to keep them boosted.
And also, Logan, that you mentioned that 4-game winning streak, the Indians are now 21-15. They have secured the second spot in the AL Central Division. They're 1.5 games behind the Chicago White Sox. Indians 8-2 in their last 10. Chicago also 8-2 in their last 10 games. And the Royals have really been struggling their last few games. They're only 1-9 in their last 10 games, which has dropped their record now to 17-21. So right now, the Chicago White Sox and the Cleveland Indians, the only two teams in the AL Central Division with winning records. The upcoming schedule for the Indians, Logan, today they will be playing the Mariners in Seattle. That'll be Game 3 of this 4-game series against the Mariners. Game 4, the final game, will be tomorrow at 4:10 p.m. Indians will then stay on the West Coast. They'll be taking on the Angels. 2 games that first pitch at 9:38 p.m. starting Monday, May 17th against the Angels, and then Tuesday, May 18th as well. Then that third and final game against the Angels will be Wednesday, May 19th. That'll be an earlier first pitch at 8:07 p.m. So Indians still with 5 more road games before they head back to Progressive Field with a matchup with matchups against the Twins, Logan. So to finish off these 5 games, what do you think the Indians need to improve on if they want to have some momentum before they return home?
Well, what we saw last night, it seemed like the problem was runs at the end of the game. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the Indians did score 2 runs in that 9th inning, but they also gave up 4 in the 7th.
Right.
So they were able to hold it down to only 3 runs all the way until the 7th. So to me, holding on to games at the bare end in those last 4 or 5 innings with those relievers and closers,
right,
is exactly what the Indians need to figure out how to do. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, with what I wanted to see, is if you've noticed in the wins, a lot of what happens is the bats get going very early.
Right.
They get hot early and they don't stop. I mean, against the Cubs on Wednesday, they only won 2-1 because they didn't get the bats going until the 5th inning.
Yeah.
You look at the Seattle game on Thursday, they got the bats going in the 2nd inning. So to me, they need to get hot early and they need to get at least a run on the board in the first 3 innings. And if they can get 1 run on the board, then they'll be the pitcher can pitch a little bit more comfortably, and I think it'll kind of take a little bit of pressure off the starters.
How do you feel against their matchups with the Angels, Logan? Because you never know, especially on the West Coast. The Angels have really been struggling their last few games. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games, 16-21. So they have not had a great season thus far. But they are 8-9 at home, so they are around 500. Does that concern you with the Indians heading there?
Yeah, I mean, it does concern me a little bit because when you look at this team, I mean, their record is very unintimidating, but they've got a couple guys that are just hot. I mean, you talk about first baseman Jared Walsh batting .326 right now. That's really impressive.
Yeah.
He has had a fantastic season. Jose Iglesias has been right there with a .288. And, of course, you cannot talk about the Angels without mentioning one of the best players in baseball, and Mike Trout.
Right.
having yet another fantastic season, and he's batting .350. So I think that this team worries me a little bit, but the Indians got to take at least 2 of the 3.
And as as you mentioned, Indians hoping to hopefully can take 2 of those 3 games, maybe all 3 of them. But in terms of that schedule, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, Indians 2 games against the Mariners to close out the weekend, and then they will be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. They'll be in California with matchups against the Angels before returning home to Cleveland for 3 matchups against the Minnesota Twins. After those 3 matchups against Minnesota, the Indians will head back out on the road to Detroit to take on the Tigers. And in terms of standings, as I mentioned, Indians 21-15 on the season. They're 11-8 on the road and 10-7 at home. 8-2 in their last 10, have been playing some great baseball. So very much looking forward to seeing what they do in these next 5 road games. So Logan, I'll ask you this once again. Well, let's start with the American League. Which teams were you most impressed by this week in the American League? Obviously, the Indians and the White Sox have been playing very well. Which teams were you most impressed by, and also which teams were you most disappointed with? Obviously, we're talking about the Angels. They're only 16-21. The Twins are 12-24. They haven't been playing well at all. The Yankees only 4 games above 500. So, what are your thoughts in the American League, Logan?
Well, you mentioned the Yankees and how they've had a tough season, but, in this particular week, if you just want to talk about this week, they've been one of the most impressive teams in my eyes because, just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about them sub-500.
Right.
They were really struggling, and they've won 7 of their last 10. Now it's 21-17. They're having a much better-looking season. They look like they're back in the playoff race, and this looks like a much more improved team than we saw just a couple weeks ago. So for the AL most improved or most impressive the past week, I've got to go with the New York Yankees. And
also, who's kind of been disappointing you this past week in the AL?
In the AL, for the most disappointing, you got to talk about, you already mentioned it earlier, but Kansas City. Absolutely abysmal the past week. 1-9 in their last 10.
Yeah.
That is just ridiculous. This team was top of the AL Central just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and now they're third at 17-21.
Right.
They're like 6.5 games behind the White Sox or something like that. It is ridiculous. That is just pathetic. You got squeezed by the Indians, and the Indians are no team to sneeze at. We've talked about them. They're a very solid team, but getting swept is something else.
You've got to win at least 2 of those games, I would think, if you're the Royals, especially when it's on your home field.
I would have taken 1.
Yeah.
It keeps you winning. It keeps your momentum up. But, I just can't see how this team can even bounce back after losing 9 of the last 10. So that's got to be my most disappointing team in the AL.
Now, let's go to the National League, Logan. There are a lot of teams who have been, kind of mediocre at best. I think the New York Mets, they're 7-3 in their last 10 games. They're 11-4 at home. But you're talking teams like the defending champions, the Washington Nationals. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. 15 or not the defending champions, excuse me, from 2 years ago. They're 15-19. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games. You've got the Colorado Rockies. They're 15-24. Dodgers. They're 5-5 in their last 10 games at 500. So they're still kind of struggling through the season. So your thoughts on the National League? Who's impressed you the most, Logan, and who's been very disappointing for you this week?
So for this week, the most impressive team I'll start with was the Philadelphia Phillies.
Yeah.
7-3 in the past 10 games. The bats, as we mentioned, have been really impressive. Andrew McCutchen has not played too well this season, only a batting average of .230. But JT Realmuto with .302. You're talking about Bryce Harper, who has always been fantastic, and he continues to do just that. But John Segura at the shortstop position also playing very well.
Right.
So to me, that's got to be my most impressive team for this past week.
And who to you, there are a lot of teams in the National League, Logan, who have not been playing well. teams like the Nationals I was mentioning 2 years ago, they won the whole World Series. Now they're 15-19, 3-7 in their last 10 games. The Cubs, they're 18-19. I was kind of expecting a little bit more from them. You got teams like the Dodgers who, are trying to keep their heads above water. They're 21-17 now, but we weren't saying that at the beginning of the season. So your thoughts on the most disappointing team in the National League this week?
The most disappointing in the past week, again in particular, has got to be, for me, the Milwaukee Brewers. They were a very good team in the NL. They looked like they were one of the top teams in the NL a couple weeks ago. Now they were 3-7 in the last 10, just a game over 500. They have one of the hottest bats and one of the best bats in baseball for the past 3 seasons in Christian Yelich.
Right.
And they just can't do anything with it. They can't have any help with them. One of the better batters in the past couple seasons, Jackie Bradley Jr., former Boston Red Sox, has not played well this season at all. 165 average in 34 games. That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, Christian Yelich is batting .353. Despite only playing 10 games, I know that this team doesn't have, Christian Yelich hasn't played a lot, but earlier in the season, this team looked really good, and I just don't know what happened.
And I definitely think you made a great point about the Brewers. There's still hope, though. They are 20-19, so there's still a game above 500, but they need to clean up that home record. They're only 9-11 on at home. So, as I mentioned, that's definitely going to be something you want to improve on, especially when you head into the playoffs. Home field advantage, as we've seen with the Indians case, can be very crucial in a playoff series. Well, Logan, that concludes baseball topics for this week in the Cleveland Sports Show. I want to get to our final topic of discussion, which is the Cleveland Browns. That's right, even though the NFL offseason has been going on for the last few months, there's still some football to talk about, because we talked about the NFL draft a couple of weeks ago, and now the scheduling for all the teams have been released. All the schedules out, including our very own Cleveland Browns. So the way the scheduling will work this year, Logan, is the Browns will only have one preseason game. It'll be in Atlanta against the Falcons. It'll all start August 29th of this year at 8 p.m. The Browns then open up their regular season in Kansas City against the Chiefs. No better way to start the season than possibly getting some revenge on Patrick Mahomes and company, but we also know that the Kansas City Chiefs have reloaded and definitely have some intentions of revenge on their mind. The Browns also playing teams like the Vikings, the Broncos. Obviously, they'll be playing their AFC North Division rivals, the Steelers, the Bengals, the Ravens. They'll also be playing teams, as I mentioned, they'll be playing the Patriots. They'll be in Foxborough November 14th. They have back-to-back weeks with games against the Ravens. And they're also playing the Packers on Christmas Day. So how about that? Christmas Day, you open your presents, have some cake or whatever you like to eat on Christmas Day. And then guess what? You get to watch the Browns take on the Green Bay Packers, who may not have Aaron Rodgers. We will see. But Logan, your thoughts on the schedule that the Browns have? With the schedule that they have, do you expect them to generate a winning record with the offensive power that they have?
A winning record is, for me, locked in. And if it's not, then, clearly this team needs to get blown up again. It's not, at this point, last year was offense. You talk about Baker Mayfield, you had Odell, you had one of the best running backs in football with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Right.
So this team reloaded defensively as well. Jadeveon Clowney is a monster on the edge, and that is going to be one of the biggest additions this offseason. Everybody, nobody talks about John Johnson in the secondary either.
Yeah.
I think adding safety help is going to be a major improvement in the secondary. So a winning record for me is imminent. But when it comes to whether they are going to lead the AFC North is more the question for me. I think that is going to be a tough feat for them to overcome, but I think they've got a solid chance of doing so. The Steelers, not the same. I don't think they're going to be the same team that they were last year.
No way.
the Ravens just lost their best offensive lineman,
Right.
Orlando Brown. So Lamar Jackson will be running around looking like Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl next season in my eyes. And then the Bengals are not even a question. I'm sorry. They're not going to do anything. Jamar
Right.
Chase is great, but Joe Burrow is going to tear his ACL in the third game of the week.
Yeah, they needed some protection for Joe Burrow. I think Jamar Chase is great, but I thought protecting the quarterback was going to be the number one concern. And
I 100% agree, and that's why I'm not even going to question whether the Bengals are going to be in that conversation. But I think the Browns and the Ravens are going to be the two teams going head to head for that AFC North crown. And I think the Browns will prevail if Baker Mayfield can find a way to play like Week 6 and on Baker Mayfield from last season.
Also, quick question on the AFC North, Logan. Do you think that the Steelers can make the playoffs? Because I know that they're Big Ben's obviously getting older, but they have some young receiving core that has some promise. Do you think the Steelers can get a playoff push and maybe make it to the wild card?
I think that's a really tough thing to think about because this team, when you look at the AFC as a whole,
right,
very good team. It's a very good conference. Indianapolis is still there.
Yes.
And that team has an elite defense. You want to talk about Tennessee with the best running back in football right now. Buffalo is still there.
Yeah.
I think Miami is going to be great again. At 10-6 last year, they're going to keep winning games.
Right.
So, to me, I think it's quite unlikely that they do make a playoff push. I don't think it's impossible. But I don't find it likely, especially considering the fact that they have to play the Browns twice, the Ravens twice. So,
right.
In my eyes, this Steelers team is not a playoff team. But not anything's possible.
Right. Yeah, especially when, any given week and, with the NFL playoffs, one game can change everything. So let's go back into this Browns schedule real quick here, Logan. Are there any specific matchups that you are really looking forward to watching, whether it's a home game or away game? Any specific matchups that you really are craving to see and cannot wait for?
Yeah, it's honestly that week 1, going into Arrowhead Stadium to play the best quarterback in football and some of the best offensive weapons that we've seen in a long time. And Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. So I'm really excited to see the Browns go in and play the Chiefs on the road. That'll be a very interesting game, and I'm excited to see where this defense is at and to see if they can put the kind of pressure on this Patrick Mahomes-led offense like the Bucs did. And the other thing that I've actually was kind of interested in is it kind of just to shy away from the Browns talk is to see if the teams are going to be able to react and they've figured out a way to stop Patrick Mahomes offensively.
Right.
We saw the Bucs in the Super Bowl solely use the cover 2. They just used cover 2 the whole game. And that team didn't score a touchdown.
Well, also because you can't forget that Kansas City's offensive line was pretty much decimated in that Super Bowl. So
yeah, that is true. So I'm still interested. I mean, to see what happens with this team and to see if they might have just found a weakness in Patrick Mahomes' in Andy Reid's schemes offensively.
Yeah, I mean, that Week 1 matchup, it really does not get any better than that. Browns will have some revenge maybe heading into Arrowhead Stadium, but the Chiefs certainly have some revenge when it comes to Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who will definitely be a threat once again in the NFL. They brought everyone back and to run it back. So, I mean, a lot of people, have Tampa Bay as their favorites because, like I said this a couple months ago before the Super Bowl, you just can't bet against Tom Brady. Well, Logan, that concludes our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your Saturday morning to join me. I really appreciate having you on the show every week. Once again, great analysis. Super excited to talk with you about the NBA play-in and the playoffs these next couple of weeks. So I'll contact you again with all of that. In the meantime, though, take care and have a great rest of your weekend.
You as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Logan. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you so much for joining me this week. But hang on, the show is not done quite just yet. Because I want to talk to you about where you can access more of my media work from the Nordonia Hills community. if you're on NordoniaHills.news, it's very easy for you to access my other work, such as previous episodes of the Cleveland Sports Show, articles I've written. All of it you can find on the Contributors tab on the NordoniaHills.news website. So once you click on that tab, just find my name. It's Darius Sethna. It's spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. Once you click on my name, as I mentioned, you'll be able to see all of my work, previous episodes of the podcast. I also had a chance to do some sports breaks during my senior internship at the WMBU radio station in Akron with host Christophus Dominic. So those are also on my page on NordoniaHills.news in that contributors tab. So make sure you take a listen to those as well. You can also find all of my work on Twitter. That's right. Just type in my name on Twitter in the Twitter search bar, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, or you can type in my Twitter handle at Nordonia Sports. I actually have been kind of busy on my Twitter these last couple of days because I went to a Cavs game. Not only was I at the game, but my mom and I, we actually got upgraded to the courtside seats. And I have a little snippet of a clip from my experience at the game. Also, I want to send a big shout out once again to Colin Sexton, for he actually had one of the ball boys give me one of his shoes from this season. Just wanted to say thank you once again to him. You can see my picture with me and with the shoe and I on Twitter, on my Twitter page. You can also find all of my work from the Nordonia Hills, from NordoniaHills.news on Twitter as well. Episodes to the podcast, as well as links to all of my articles on NordoniaHills.news. I also posted those sports breaks with Mr. Dominic on Twitter as well. So if you're on Twitter, you can get your Cleveland sports cravings with my Twitter channel. At Nordonia Sports is my Twitter handle. Also very happy to say that the Cleveland Sports Show is also on YouTube. So if you're on YouTube, you have access to the Cleveland Sports Show. Just go to the Nordonia Hills News YouTube page, and they will have the episodes already in their page, ready for you to click on and listen to. Very easy to access. Once you're at the NordoniaHills.news YouTube page, you have the Cleveland Sports Show at the click of your mouse. Also, I'm very happy to say once again that the Cleveland Sports Show is also on Spotify. That's right. So if you're on Spotify, you just type in my name, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and you will be able to access all of my episodes to the podcast. I also have those sports breaks with Mr. Dominic on the Spotify channel as well. So if you're on the go, well, guess what? You can still take the Cleveland Sports Show with you with Spotify. So that concludes my latest edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to listen to the podcast. Really appreciate you guys listening week in and week out. Until our next episode, once again, special thanks to Logan Purcell. And also want to send a shout out to Lindsey Gottlieb, an assistant coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who accepted a head coaching position at the University of Southern California. So wishing her the best of luck as well. Thank you so much for your time spent in Cleveland with the Cavs. Ladies and gentlemen, we will see you next week for another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Until then, take care and have a wonderful week.